Yeah, welcome back to another edition of the Men Who Cry podcast. Make sure you like, subscribe, review, tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend, to tell a friend. If you not do these things, I have to assume that you did not like To Pimp a Butterfly by Kendrick Lamar. On today's episode, we will be talking to you guys about censorship, brand deals, big time mergers. But first, we're going to be talking about that good old football. So, on this pod, like I try to get you guys, we try to get into the business side of sports a lot of times. Let's talk about a lot of things surrounding the sports world, and that will be on this show. Sometimes it's a good old-fashioned time to talk about the sports, and we will be talking about the NFL, but more specifically, we will be talking about a team that normally disappoints all of its fans, all 12 of them, all over the country, and that is your Los Angeles Chargers. Yes, your Los Angeles Chargers will have the best record in the NFL, tied with a bunch of teams that also are still undefeated. We currently have 6 undefeated teams in the NFL as of right now, and that number will stay the same no matter when this podcast posts. We are recording this on Monday, so we will not be talking about the Ravens and the Lions Monday Night Football game. And the reason why we're talking about the Chargers game is because it was a fantastic game. If you got to watch, Justin Herbert essentially left the game. Led a game-winning drive. Probably right now has a play of the year. Got out of a sack, running to his left, throwing with his right hand, going across the field, hit Keenan Allen right by where the defender's having him. Touchdown, game, tying drive, and then having the game-winning drive with the field goal by Dicker the kicker. And this is for me. If you guys do not know, I'm a big Michigan football fan, right? Hail. And the reason why I was big on the Chargers this year, and the reason why I like the Chargers doing a lot in the playoffs, was because of Jim Harbaugh. Jim Harbaugh is not a guy who's there for a very long time, okay? He will do stuff to get himself up out of wherever he's at all the time. Stanford, San Diego, Michigan, the Niners, and the same thing will happen with the Chargers. I think this run with Harbaugh will be at worst 4 years, at best 7, because that's literally the longest time he's done. I was shocked he stayed at Michigan as long as he did. He was at Michigan for 7 seasons, And I think a lot of people, when they thought he went there, thought he would only be there for maybe a year or two. There are rumors about him leaving the year before they even won the national championship. And the thing is with Harbaugh is he sets a type of culture in the sense of we really are the best that we got. And that dude likes having a lot of big guys and likes running the ball. And he's very simply a guy who likes big people, right? Football at the very fundamental core is really, really, really big people running really, really, really fast at other really, really big people, right? And the fact that he's gotten Quentin Johnson, who by all means looked like a bust, to be at this rate, he might make the Pro Bowl as a wide receiver, is incredible. The Keenan Allen was basically left for done last year with the Bears, and now he's coming back and is clearly impacting the game so far. They just lost Najee Harris to an Achilles injury. He wasn't really playing that well. Amari Hampton, the first-round pick for running back, had his best game of his career. Granted, it's only been 3 games, but he's gotten off to a good start as well. And the defense is a top-notch defense in the league. The question is just, can the force of Jim Harbaugh, and as powerful of a player that he was and a coach that he is, overcome the unstoppable force, which has always been the Chargers? The Chargers have been the team that they've had great regular seasons for long periods of time. LaDainian Tomlinson teams with Phillip Rivers, the Drew Brees teams, even some of the Justin Herbert teams prior to Harbaugh getting there, made the playoffs, had a lot of really good regular seasons, but they would always find a way to lose the game that they just didn't need to lose. It's different between losing. You're losing the NFL. No one's going undefeated, right? But the comical ways that the Chargers would find a way to lose. I mean, at one point, they damn near killed their starting quarterback to get Justin Herbert in the game. True story, all right? Tyrod Taylor was stabbed essentially by the team doctor. Fun fact, couldn't sue because he was trying to take a pain inducing injection and basically almost had a collapsed lung. Craziest way a person has started an NFL game ever. Found out like 15 minutes before the games even began. And the idea of them breaking through and actually, getting maybe to the AFC Championship game, even maybe getting to the Super Bowl, I don't think anyone went as far as that with them, but this for sure seems to be a playoff team. If you go 3-0 and your next game is against the Giants, who we'll be talking about a little bit later, the expectation at that point should be at least getting the wild card if you don't win the division. As of right now, they're technically up 3 games on the Chiefs, even though the Chiefs won yesterday because they had the division in hand. And the next time they do play them, I don't necessarily remember if that game was counted as a Chargers home game. I would assume so because no one goes to Chargers home games. But they got one more game against them, against the Chiefs later in the season. And it will be a nice change to see if Justin Herbert can finally be able to become the hype that what he is. Because by and large part, Justin Herbert is the prototypical quarterback. If you had to make a quarterback, you're making Justin Herbert, right? That's the guy that every GM would probably want on their team. A guy who physically fits the bill. But he's never actually looked like one of the best quarterbacks in the league outside of what he actually looks like. His play has never determined that. And now it looks like a guy who's like kind of putting it all together, and his team is winning because of that. And he has been a guy who's been on the fringes of being a star. And can he now elevate into that class, right? Because if you think about it, we pretty much just have the 4 guys at the top with Lamar, Patrick, Joe Burrow, and Josh Allen. And the 5th spot seems to always be kind of like a rotating door, whether it's Jalen Hurts, whether it's going to be Matthew Stafford. Some people might have had like Dak Prescott in there. You have Baker Mayfield talking about it. That 5th spot's always a recurring time. And for me, you need to put more pellets on the wall before you're able to get to those guys' status. All those guys have either gone to a Super Bowl, won a Super Bowl, or won a league MVP. You're going to have to do one of those 3 things before I can even put you in that class of guys. That's why, to me, if there's a 5th, you got to put Hurts in there. But he's been incredible to start the season. And this seems to be a time where he's actually going to fulfill some of the belief that a lot of people had in him. Moving over to the Sunday night game, which was oddly not interesting, but not terrible in the Chiefs versus the New York Giants. The main takeaways, I think, is that the Chiefs, while it is September, they do not necessarily look like a good football team. That first half, they looked really, really bad. And if they weren't playing a team in the Giants, I feel like a lot of other teams would have beaten them if they played that way. However, there was still something to me about the idea of a heart of a champion, of a team that goes into it. But this team just gives off the vibe of like kind of just hanging around. Now, can they hang around enough to go on a Super Bowl run? Absolutely. But I think the thing is that's so fearful of them is the fact that everyone thought that 2 seasons ago, that was the year they were done. And they won the Super Bowl, right? Last year, while they were winning all those games, people were like, this team doesn't look that great. And they still got to Super Bowl, right? It's funny how we have the brain and understand that, like, we know this is going to end. They're not making Super Bowl every year. They're not, okay? Something's going to happen. They're just not going to have a good team. Mahomes is going to get hurt. Something's going to take place. They're not making the Super Bowl every year. But no one's going to think and put out there that they think they have no chance to get there or win it. So I don't necessarily think that this team has like the amount of talent as at this moment, especially on the offensive end. I think their offensive line is shaky at best. And until they get their wide receivers back fully healthy, it is going to take a while for them to be able just to move the ball. They basically scored their points on one drive and a bunch of like PI calls. And this will be Andy Reid, Mahomes, and those guys' best work if they're able to. I definitely still have them making the playoffs, But them advancing far in the playoffs would be a very interesting kind of boat, because I do think the Chargers at this point will win that division, and they're going to have to go completely on the road in order to get back to the Super Bowl for the fourth year in a row, if they're able to do so. The other team that was in that game that unfortunately didn't realize was in that game was the New York Football Giants. Now, the Giants, while they have the prestige of a team, like I say, like the Yankees, they have for the last 12 years have been a representation of the Jets. They do not get clowned as much as the Jets, maybe because we still remember the Super Bowls that they won, which weren't that long ago, but it's getting dusty up there with those things. And maybe they don't have the same comical errors that the Jets seem to find a way to lose games. But all in all, they lose games in somewhat heartbreaking fashion in all the ways. And now they have put themselves in what I like to call a football quagmire, right? No decision in what they can do can necessarily seem to be the best decision, right? Russell Wilson is clearly done. He was done last year. He was done the year before. It's over for him, right? The best case scenario you thought was, okay, if the Giants were able to go maybe like 1-3 in their first 4 games, maybe get to 2-4 after the first 6, you can stave off the noise enough for Dark to come in. And then maybe when you get to December, your season might be over. You can then put him in the games for the last couple of games, get him a little experience. The team would at least have had enough reps with him at that point. You see what you got. You go into the offseason with him. Now, by and all means, this guy is going to start. If he doesn't start next week, he's starting the week after that. I mean, the writing's on the wall. The coach, I think, foolishly keeps putting him in the game for weird packages just to hand the ball off, and then putting Russ back in, which, again, I understand that these guys are football players. They have to have the mentality to go out there and win. But your starting quarterback is getting booed when he gets put back on the field, okay, in Russell Wilson. That's not going to help this guy at all. This will they, won't they kind of thing has kind of just been dumb, for lack of better terms. And this isn't going to help the team going forward overall. But the issue is that I don't know if they're putting in Jackson Dart to be able to help the team win, or they're just putting in Jackson Dart because they think that this guy can help them save their asses. And this becomes the problem with the whole thing, with the start of this, right? When John Mara made the decision to bring these guys back, he put himself in an impossible position. Because what's the best way to extend your life as a GM or a head coach in the NFL? Drop the quarterback. It's the easiest thing to do. Fans always get hope. That hopium is a great drug to ignore from all the losing, right? And when you basically brought them back but didn't extend them, you put yourself in this position of, okay, we have this young quarterback, but then we're now going to have to maybe fire the coach and fire the GM and bring in a new coach and a new GM who didn't draft these guys. Now, again, this has happened before. We've seen organizations draft the quarterback, fire the people at the top who had this quarterback, and it still worked out. Herbert is, an example of one. Firing 2 different coaches, actually, before they got to Jim Harbaugh. But it's just the fact of you putting this guy in a position where he can't really be successful. So now you might have to have this guy go out there and maybe be good, maybe be bad, who knows? But the expectation is just showing how that this organization has just made bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. The fact that Daniel Jones is being talked about as an MVP candidate, that right there is abominable. Coming off of having Saquon be in the MVP conversation and win the Super Bowl the year before. So Shane has let go of 2 All-Pros in Saquon Barkley and Xavier McKinney. And the guy that he didn't draft, but he extended on who he cut now might be leading the Colts to an AFC South division title. Like, I don't know what John Mara is going to do, but he is in a world of bad options. And for football fans, that's not great. When your owner is your beacon of hope of trying to see of like what she should do with these guys up here. So the Giants, again, are still, the blue version of the Jets. We just don't simply talk about them in that sort of light. All right, sliding over to a topic that's been talked about a lot, and unfortunately, it's getting a lot of people fired and in trouble. So, I've always loved the conversation of sports because I feel like sports allows you to enter into rooms that you would never think to be into, right? It allows you to think about things that affect real people in real life, and has people thinking about the world in so different ways, right? Sports and politics have always interlocked in ways that has changed the outlook of this country, changed the outlook of the world, frankly. And it's been a interesting kind of point where you see this kind of happening with the death of Charlie Kirk. And last week, prior to his funeral, you saw several different baseball teams, NFL teams honor his legacy by either putting his name up on the Jumbotron or having a moment of silence, these things like that. And I'm not going to completely get into what his contents of his comments were. If you want to do that, go ahead and do that, right? They're available. They're online. You could read what he said, and I would hopefully make you determine what you feel about his comments after you read and see what he said. But the point of the matter is, I'm just really curious and trying to wonder where are all the people who say the stick to sports crowd? Because that's honestly my question upon this. Because by any token, having these things are not sticking to sports. It is something that has always been used to silence people when they want to speak about issues that bother them and affect them. And yet, we are now wrapping this moment in time in sports. It's baked all in it. And I think for those who are looking to honor him and compare him to likes of, MLK or Malcolm X, need to very much understand that, those people were not honored by sports figures, especially at the time of their passing. They were not. And understanding the words of all three men that I just named and comparing them is a farce. It's not true. And that's not controversial to say because that's just what these people spoke. And having that be almost pushed into a sports aspect is just so fascinating for people to see. Because you have now entered my realm of saying sports is as political as you want it to be. And it can be an advocate and a push for everything that you want to have. And so for those who support, follow, mourn, that is your right. I just very interesting to point out the prospect of allowing others to do the same when those things happen that you might not necessarily agree with. Because sports is for all in all different walks of life and land. And it's for something that's going to make people go to places that I think they really shouldn't have, right? Obviously, people have been doxxed, people have been fired, people have been kicked out of school for talking about some of the things they said about Charlie Kirk. And to be clear, I think it's just in poor taste overall to spew negativity when someone is very not just died, very publicly died in a space where, and I don't think we even think about this now, unfortunately, that children saw that. Children saw a man get murdered in front of them. That's also just a very traumatic experience to even comprehend. And so I hope that this time that did take place is one where people understand of like sports can be healing in all its ways. And the idea that it cannot fall into the idea of a left versus right conversation is nonsense, and it's never been very true. And even speaking on this topic, to slide a little bit over to what's happening with Jimmy Kimmel, is also fascinating as well, because as news just broke today, Jimmy Kimmel will be on the airways. By the time you guys hear this, it'll be probably later in the day if you do watch his show. There seems to be a report right now that he has come to some type of agreement with ABC, and so his show will be starting back this week. The biggest thing about this that we are talking about, at least I'm interested in talking about, is the fact that ABC might need to choose between Jimmy Kimmel and the NFL. Now, what we mean by that is, if you look, there's a report in Front Office Sports, it's a great follow if you guys don't follow, talking about how the Trump administration can still nix the deal between the NFL and ESPN involving Red Zone. So, guys, what we were talking about a couple weeks ago about how the NFL was giving Red Zone over to ESPN, and the fact that they will be able to have their games, and also the NFL is getting 10% profit share of what's happening for ESPN. That still has to be approved, which also, I'll raise my hand. I didn't know that the president had to approve all of these merger deals. Like, I never knew that was a thing, but now we do now. And so the power of the president has been shown throughout the year, and even during his first term, of what he will allow and will not allow. And this deal, there's no word on exactly when this has to be finalized, per se, or when they would like this to be finalized. But it'll be very interesting because they can't really fire Jimmy twice, I would say. And I think if Jimmy is who he is and stands by his morals and who he is as a comedian, he's going to double down on what he says. So is ABC willing to take that potential loss, or will there be some type of workaround from it? There seems to be no reports from what we were seeing. Sinclair, which was one of the local broadcast partners, was speaking about not airing the show and wanting some type of donation from Kimmel to Turning Point, which was Charlie Kirk's organization. And how this is going to be kind of processed will be interesting to see of who blinks first in this kind of scenario, because the NFL has been the most powerful sports entity we've had in this country in the last 30, 40 years, right? They have never blinked to anything, right? But this is the most out there president, we can say, that we've had in a long time. And who will blink in this scenario is anyone's guess. And I'm not sure if Kimmel will be able to last at this point, if it comes down to him versus potentially adding Red Zone to ESPN. But that is all the time we have for today, guys. Thank you guys again. Make sure you like, subscribe, review. Like I said, always tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. And I'll be back later this week to talk to you guys about more sports. All right. This is just Men Who Cry podcast. Peace.